Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up for the month of October, the spooky month of October. And that includes a wrap-up of all the books that I've read for the Occult Detective readathon, as well as many others. Stay tuned. Okay, before we begin, I had a lot of really good reads this month, one or two disappointments, but nothing that really completely blew me away. So there's no 5 stars, plenty of 4 stars, but I think it's also because I'm getting a lot stricter with myself in terms of just giving out stars. And if it's a 5-star book, it has to really blow me away. It has to be memorable, it has to be something that I'm going to think about afterwards and not ever forget. And so a lot of these books were a lot of fun, but it's not something that's going to stay with me for a long time. Okay, let's start off with the Occult Detective readathon that was hosted and created by MJ over at Reading Is Life, and a whole lot of other people took part, and I'm going to link that all down below. And the first book I read, the prompt was basically a classic. So I think we're talking before 1960, or was it 1950, I can't remember. And my choice, which I've spoken about already, was The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley. Now this was a very enjoyable story. It was action-packed, swashbuckling, almost reads like an adventure, but of course with Satanism, the occult, black magic, and all sorts of dark deeds. But I really enjoyed myself, and for such an old book, this was a lot of fun. And I'm going to read Dennis Wheatley in future. This was just a great read, a nice change of pace. Next up, we had more of a modern occult detective novel, and I did a buddy read with MJ on Falling Angel by William Hjortsberg. Now, actually, both of us actually discussed that it would have been better to read the book before watching the movie. The movie being Angel Heart with Robert De Niro. Can't remember all the other actors, but it was a phenomenal movie, and it was a phenomenal book. And it's basically about this PI, private investigator, Harry Angel, who's basically takes up what looks like it's going to be just a very basic shut and dried case of a missing persons case, where he has to find this person. He's hired by someone named Louis Cypher. Now, it's a hell of a lot of fun, very dark at times, and as he starts to investigate this missing person, tries to find him, there's just murder and mayhem, and he gets embroiled into this world of voodoo, Satanism, the occult. And yeah, it's a fantastic novel, and do yourselves a favor and read it, and then maybe watch the movie Angel Heart after that. But I really enjoyed it. I think one of the problems I had with the novel, in fact both of us had, was that in the movie, with all the voodoo and so on, it was set in New Orleans, whereas in the book it's set in, I think it is New York, so it just had a different feel. I think it was New York or Chicago, probably New York. And so it had more of a city feel, whereas the movie had more of a kind of a serious voodoo feel. And that was our big sort of criticism. I also sort of criticized it a bit because the ending, I wanted to know more about this character, Louis Cypher. In the movie he's portrayed quite brilliantly. In the book, in particular the ending, it just didn't really live up to the movie for me. But it was still a great read, and I gave it 4 stars. So yeah, it was a very good start to the month for me. Okay, and the third prompt was author or characters that are diverse, and I chose Bloodshot by Tanya Huff. Now this was a lot of fun, also a serious change of pace because it reads more like a fantasy adventure, but there are definitely kind of horrific components. and it's a series of short stories, and it involves this private investigator who's, what's her name again, Tanya, who's actually a vampire, and she has a lover who's also on the police force, and they run into all sorts of adventures in these short stories involving other creatures. I know there's a creature called a djinn, and there's a poltergeist at some stage, and all sorts of other wonderful creatures. And they get themselves into some terrifying situations. There's a little bit of horror here, but still, the stories read more like an action adventure as opposed to like all-out horror. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, let's look at some books dealing with clowns and carnivals and that kind of stuff. And the fourth book that I'm going to talk about is Connie, and this was the biggest disappointment of the lot. It's an extreme novella, pretty short, but yeah, the first part of it was this horror show that's described, it's almost disguised as a carnival, and these four teenager types who are pretty much, didn't like them at all, and they go into this carnival, this horror show, and they start seeing the fact that these horrors seem to be way too real, and they start investigating, and guess what, they get caught, and yeah, they get transported somewhere, and then it turns into what you would expect, a lot of splatterpunk, extreme horror, but the problem is the story kind of disappears, and I didn't enjoy that. I wanted story, I wanted more carnival, I wanted more like something to make sense, and instead it just becomes very, very, very nasty, very bloody, very extreme, but it didn't seem to have any point. So yeah, this was a disappointment for me. I was really looking forward to this, but it was a very short read, and there is a follow-up, and to be honest, if you're a fan of splatterpunk, you might enjoy this. I'm not saying that you won't enjoy this. I can see some positive reviews on Goodreads. I'm not writing it off, but it just wasn't for me. I wanted a bit more story, plot, and more carnival. Okay, the next one is Clown Infestation. Now, I can't remember the name of these authors because they're all on my Kindle. I didn't write them down, so hopefully you can see them on the screen above me. But this was a hell of a lot of fun. And the premise is just amazing in itself. That clowns are pests in this particular world. And they are pests to the point where they might end up as roadkill if they start walking across the road and they get run over. And if they're discovered, they're gently taken back to the forest where they come from. So they're just harmless pests. Now our protagonist, this housewife, husband is an absolute, complete arsehole, and she doesn't seem to realize it. This was part of the problem for me, just a small problem. But anyway, she discovers a clown in her house, and her husband is not convinced. And yeah, it becomes a bit of a problem, the infestation of a clown, and it goes very gross from there. A lot of fun. It's quite fast paced, and what I love about it, and this is not really a spoiler, is that a dog gets involved as well. It's kind of one of the heroes, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with this, and I highly recommend it. I just also wanted to know a little bit more about the clowns. I'm not going to say anything more for spoilers, but just wanted to know a bit more about the background of the story. It would have been fun. But still, it's just a thrill ride, it's a lot of fun. And that is Clown Infestation. Okay, and my favourite clown read, or a creepy carnival read for the month, was the Poo Family Circus by Will Elliott. Now, this was a very, very strange novel. As a full-length novel, very, very strange, about this character who ends up stealing this dust from the clowns that he happens upon one night, and he gets caught up in this creepy carnival. It's a very dark carnival that's sort of situated somewhere between earth and hell, and the clowns come for him and they say, you are going to audition for a part whether you like it or not. This book is full of all sorts of fantastical creatures, including creepy psychotic clowns. In fact, just about everyone in this carnival is psychotic. You've got these acrobats, you've got these dwarves, you got these freaks. It's really a weird story, and it gets into kind of a bizarro fiction sort of thing, but it's a lot of fun, and it goes to very dark places, be warned. Just as the previous book I mentioned, I wouldn't call it totally extreme, but it does get very dark and it gets very gory, but it's a thrill ride, and I thoroughly enjoyed the story, and yeah, I would highly recommend this, and that is the Poo Family Circus. Okay, next up we're going to talk about some stories that deal with hauntings, and that's the 7th position is Haunted by James Herbert, which is right here. It's one of the few books that I read that's not on Kindle, and just let's be honest, I was a little bit disappointed. I kind of realized by now that haunted house stories are not my favorite, and it's okay. This had a few twists. It was kind of original, but it's about a paranormal investigator who goes to investigate this haunting of this secluded mansion with this very strange family. It's like aunt and these kids, and very strange things happen. And he's kind of a skeptic. He doesn't believe what's going on, but the longer he stays there, he starts to realize, there's something going on. And the story is kind of, it's reasonably well written. I just found that parts of it just dragged for me, just lost my interest, but it has a few twists and turns along the end, and the actual ending is pretty good, but it didn't terrify me. And I want my horror to terrify me, to scare me. It was chilling at times. And like I said, there were a few surprises, but no, it didn't really do it for me. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. That is Haunted by James Herbert. Okay, next up we have Bag of Bones by Stephen King. A nice long novel. I think it's about 700 pages. And I was wondering after I've read it why it took me so long to actually pick it up, because it was pretty awesome, but still only 4 stars for me. It's a slow burn, haunting, almost a love story, ghost story, and it deals with this writer who's lost his wife and he's grieving, and he goes back to this lake house. There's almost like 2 plot threads as well. He meets this beautiful woman, he happens upon her, and this thing happens that he starts protecting her against this awful, terrible billionaire. And at the same time, his lake house seems to be haunted by someone or something. Now, there are parts of this story where there's a long backstory. It's very slow in terms of building up the characters, in building up the history of this place, in building up what's actually going to happen. And I can understand why that would lose some readers. But if you're patient, everything kind of falls in place towards the end of the novel. And it does build towards a very terrifying ending, an excellent ending. And look, it's extremely well written. This is, I think, one of the best endings that Stephen King has written, and I would highly recommend it. But you do need a bit of patience. It is slow burn. It's not like some of his other novels that are a little bit quicker paced, but it's worth the effort in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I said, the second half flew by, and just some very awesome stuff happening at the end. So that is Bag of Bones by Stephen King. Okay, next up we have my book of the month. This was a thrill ride. It's just a hell of a lot of fun. And it's called The Haunted Forest Tour by Jeff Strand, and I think there was another author involved as well. But basically this is just it's just crazy, bloody, gory, absolutely hilarious, and the characters are just, some of the dialogue is so corny, but you know, the characters are just disposable, and there's just so many monsters and so many creatures and just so many weird things happening. It's just a lot of fun. And it's about, at the very beginning, this forest out of nowhere just springs up in this town. Trees just spring up, breaking everything, breaking the roads, breaking houses, and guess what, there's some monsters that come with that, and so the town is pretty much slaughtered. It's just written in such a hilarious way, and there are survivors, some of them escape, and then later on, you've got this basic forest, this haunted forest, And so people get the idea, let's make it a tourist attraction. And we can get some reinforced trams or vehicles, and we can go through and we can say hello to all the creatures. Now, I'm going to talk about this in my next video, because there is a readathon that I'm going to take part in called the Cryptid Readathon, and this was kind of mentioned as sort of part of cryptid things, because there are so many different creatures. It's almost like a Bigfoot sort of thing. But yeah, I'm kind of including that in the readathon to a certain extent. But yeah, it's so much fun. And they have a Halloween special tour. So these reinforced vehicles, nothing can get at them. No matter how big the monster is, they cannot knock this thing over, they cannot break the glass, they cannot get at these tourists who are perfectly safe. And yeah, they go into this forest on this Halloween special where they go through the middle of the forest, further than they have before, and of course things go to shit. And it's just, as I said, it's so much fun. And the dialogue, these characters, some of the dialogue before, like I say, some of them are just disposable, and it's just so funny the way, these creatures are just brilliant, the way they kill. So much gore, it's just so much fun. And the dialogue of these characters when they're just about to die a nasty death, I thoroughly enjoyed this. The reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because, as I said on Goodreads, I'm a little bit of a stingy bastard right now, and the story could have been a little bit better, but I don't think that mattered. I don't think that was the purpose. And also, yeah, the writing was a little bit thin, but it was a lot of fun, and I think that's what it set out to be. So highly recommended. That is the Haunted Forest Tour. Okay, and last but not least, I read The Prettiest Girl in the Grave by Christopher Triani. Now, this was a hell of a lot of fun, but in my opinion it had nothing on Gone to See the River Man by the same author. That was a 5-star read for me. And it's pretty much about these goth girls. You hear that a lot in the story. These girls go up to this graveyard in this forest, and they play this game that apparently through the decades, long back, going way back, young girls have played this game. And they go into this crypt in this graveyard in order to play the game. And things go to hell from there. Now, look, it was a lot of fun. It was brutal, it was gory, it was entertaining, but it just lacked something for me. It was still 4 stars, but it was almost like it was a little bit melodramatic. It's almost like the girls and the characters were a bit melodramatic at times, a bit over the top, and yeah, that didn't really do it for me. However, there are plenty of thrills and spills within this crypt, and it's a pretty awesome story, pretty interesting story, and I loved the ending as well. So, well worth effort. So I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but yeah, there's very little that can beat Gone to See the River Man, in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to reading the sequel, something along the River of Flesh. So I'm going to read that soon. So that is The Prettiest Girl in the Grave by Christopher Triani. Okay everyone, at the moment I'm busy with Tender is the Flesh, which I'm going to talk about in my next video. And yeah, it's kind of disturbing at the moment. I'm only about 20% of the way through. So wish me luck. I'm finding it quite, don't know what the right word is, sickening. Yeah, but we'll see. Maybe it'll pick up a little bit. Hopefully the story actually picks up a little bit more. But it is freaking disturbing. But yeah, until next time. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to shoot another video after this, because we've got a busy weekend ahead. So I'm going to shoot my November TBR straight after this video, and I'm going to release that on Sunday. So then I'll tell you more about that story. But anyway, take care of yourselves. Please, if you enjoy my content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.